we push policymakers to make investments in children and families. And so over the last 13 years of the organization's history, in the last 5.5 years, we've worked with 180 orgs to have the state invest almost $15 billion annually in children and families.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very important work. Very, very important work. You know, we love to sing the song Whitney Houston wrote, we are, the children are our future.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we forget that it takes resources, it takes funding, it takes collaborations and partnerships to make sure that we're elevating children, because they really are the future. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Leadership Reality Podcast with your girl, Tige Charity. This podcast is for C-suite leaders to discuss their experiences and provide insight, encouragement, and inspiration for seasoned and inspiring leaders, offering valuable solutions to today's challenges that will inspire, ignite, and invigorate new and seasoned leaders to walk in their God-given authority with compassion, kindness, and empathy. We are here to help leaders navigate a road that can often feel very lonely. So sit back, relax, and be prepared to be inspired with today's episode of Leadership Reality. Thank you. Our guest today, I'm so excited, is the beautiful, smart, talented attorney, policy change maker, Miss Shimica Gaskins. She is the CEO of Grace End Child Poverty, right?
Yes.
I am super excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you,
welcome,
Tige. I'm
welcome.
so happy to be here.
Oh my God, let's get started.
All right.
Shimica.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit first about your organization.
Oh, wonderful. So I currently lead Grace in Child Poverty, California. And it's an organization that's focused on creating a future in California where children are free from systemic racism and poverty, where every child has opportunity to have a childhood of abundance, dignity, love, so that they can thrive. And what that really means is that together with organizations all across the state, we push policymakers to make investments in children and families. And so over the last 13 years of the organization's history, in the last 5.5 years, we've worked with 180 orgs to have the state invest almost $15 billion annually in children and families.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very important work. Very, very important work. You know, we love to sing the song Whitney Houston wrote, we are, the children are our future.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we forget that it takes resources, it takes funding, it takes collaborations and partnerships to make sure that we're elevating children, because they really are the future. So thank you for the work that you're doing and just all of the policies that you're advocating around the work that you're doing. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Absolute girl, look, you know, we'll talk about money later, child, but yes, money is a real thing. So I want to know, what was your first sort of role in leadership, like in a leadership capacity?
Yeah, I mean, so as you mentioned, I'm a lawyer by training. And so after law school, I worked in a big law firm, and then I moved on to work in the federal government. So I worked at the Department of Justice. And so I would say that was probably my first big leadership role, because I started as a career attorney, and then I moved into a chief of staff position, and then I eventually moved into a deputy assistant AG position during my career there. And so during that time, you know, I was able to supervise other attorneys in the department. I worked with other agencies at the cabinet level. I was able to work with folks in the White House. So it was a really, I think, the most formative, probably first leadership experience I ever had.
Who was the president at the time you were working at the White House? Just curious, inquiring minds.
My president, Barack Obama.
Just like my president. So I have to ask you, so were you like 10 when you started? Because you look like 16 right about now. So can you please enlighten me?
You're flattering me. No, it was not.
Wait, what? That is amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. So when you were growing up, did you always know you wanted to be an attorney? Did you see yourself in a CEO position?
It's so funny. So I always wanted to be an attorney. I don't really, well, I actually know where that came from. And it was having early interactions with the court systems. And so I always really saw myself as wanting to be an attorney, but the only like leadership thing that I actually really aspired to be like really young was I wanted to be a senator from South Carolina. So I was like,
is that where you're from?
I'm going to take Strom Thurmond's spot as the first Black woman senator from South Carolina. But as time grew on, you know, in high school, I sort of shifted and really thought about how I really wanted to do child advocacy actually through my law degree. I wanted to work in family court. I thought that would be the thing that I would be doing.
Wow. Now you mentioned growing up, just your own interactions with the court system. What was that? Why were you having interactions with the court system?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Several things. You know, I honestly, you know, I grew up in the 1980s, early 90s, so experienced a lot of what many of us did at that time, the epidemics of crack and poverty and Reagan era policies that perpetuated, you know, really radical untruths about the Black community. And so, you know, there were times in which my parents, my father was incarcerated for a very short stint, but because of child support payments, you know, so something that I actually advocate against today, which is really making sure that that is not a reason we are sending folks to prison, because it's actually disruptive to families and ensuring that they actually can help take care of their children, because he was a very hardworking father, but he didn't have the resources to sustain, you know, my older sibling at the time. And so, you know, that was probably one of my most formative memories. And I probably was only like 4.5, almost 5 years old, seeing him go to court to advocate on behalf of himself and not being able to pay child support and being stepped back and literally taken away right then and there, and then having to sit with a social worker until my mother could pick us up. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And it is, you know, criminalizing poverty we got to come to the end, because it's not, as we see, it's definitely not sustainable, and it's not good for society as a whole. So I appreciate you taking your experience and saying, no, now I'm going to use what I've gone through to make sure that we're changing the system. We're changing how, and I believe, especially when it comes to just, I think it was under Clinton's administration when that was at 3 strikes, you're out kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes. So for sure, I mean, I think we had over, you know, many decades, mass incarceration came from policymaking. And so I think that's why I was really driven to it, because one of, you know, my formal training as a lawyer also taught me about how laws interact with individuals at a systemic level, and how we actually perpetuate, as you said, and criminalize poverty in so many ways, through our legal system, through other means. And the direct result of mass incarceration was continued abject poverty for those who are left at home, right? Because you're breaking up family units, you're destroying communities, you're divesting from them.
Right.
And so, you know, policy is a way in which we can actually rewrite the bad policies, and make sure that we're actually having systemic structural changes.
Yes.
It's the part of the work that I'm really passionate about, that I work on behalf of to do for children and families in California, but really to elevate the issues and the voices of those who have been so marginalized because of the fact we have decided as a country to make these policies.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they could have selected or have a better spokesperson than you really advocating for policy. Because, see, I'm a disruptor. I'll start flipping over tables and stuff like, this ain't working and that ain't working. So
trust me, I definitely feel that righteous anger a lot of times.
Yes. Well, I appreciate it. So let's talk about leadership in general. What is that like for you? What is like some of the challenges you face as a leader, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think leadership is a journey.
Yes,
right?
it is.
It's a journey, and I think some of the challenges I've faced as a leader really have been, they've moved from like the deep work that has to happen internally, right? Like to make sure that we're healing from our own traumas, that we are aware and self-aware of the things that we bring into relationships in the workplace, and being able to move out of, you know, this mindset, particularly as a lawyer, because like you know, when you're trained as a lawyer, you're trained to know everything, to have the right answers, to be able to show up. And that is not how it works in the nonprofit space.
Right.
And so I think for me, the very first challenge was like really shifting my orientation around leadership and what it meant, because being a lawyer is a very individual thing, individual success. I mean, you work in teams and firms, but it's really about your individual product that you're doing for your client versus the team work that has to happen in the nonprofit space. So some of that, and I'm a natural team builder, but at the same time, I really took on that everything was on me. Like everything's on me to raise all the money. Everything's on me to right all the wrongs. Everything's on me to, change the whole system internally and externally. And so I had to really learn the hard way to reorient that, because that's not sustainable as a person. And it's not good, because that's the whole point that people join a nonprofit, is because they believe in the mission, they want to contribute to it. And so it's really a disservice to the people who show up to work every day for you if you think if it's all on you and all about you to make things work. Yeah.
That's really good. And it's really, it's a work in progress. You're absolutely right when you say it's a journey, because I can definitely attest to that. And I can attest to it just from, especially as someone who started an organization and it's your baby, but you want to build the team. You have to build a team around you to be able to sustain the work and fulfill the mission of the organization. But building a team is challenging. So I love your approach of the self-reflection first. And girl, being an attorney, I can only imagine. Like, I tell my husband all the time, you should have been an attorney. He write about everything, okay? And we'll argue it to the teeth. No, but it does require that self-reflection. So how do you build that team around you? And how do you work with people? Because especially in the nonprofit space, I'm learning that I think I'm hiring people that are on the other side of their healing journey, but when they get in the space, sometimes I realize, oh my gosh, I feel like you almost need the same services that we're providing our young people. How do you balance that?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things you talked about, reflectiveness. So in our organization, one of the things I'm really excited about in this part of my leadership journey is that I'm in an organization now where I get to help really frame the culture and build the culture with the team that I'm building. Good. And one of the things that we really set out to do in the very beginning was like name our values. Like, what are the values of the that we want to have as an organization? And reflectiveness is one of them. So how do we take the time to actually reflect on the work that we're doing, reflect as individuals, and make sure we're building that into our organizational values and practices? But also, I think, we attract people to nonprofit work because they feel the mission, right? Yes. And I think for many, many years, maybe even decades, leaders in nonprofits believed that was enough. Right. Like, we should all be here for the mission, and that requires, lay your life on the line and do whatever it takes, and don't take care of yourself, don't take care of your family. Like, it's all about the mission. And I think again, that's really hard, because people who are driven to this work most likely are driven because they had some personal connection to it, or some personal reason that it's really important to them. And so at the same time, you have to recognize that somebody may be dealing with some unhealed trauma. They may currently be living in poverty and still working, or have family in poverty. Right. And so having that compassion and empathy, I think, is really a part of what it takes to be a leader, to build a team that can be strong and can weather the wherewithal, because this work is not easy. Right. I mean, I know but to think about, it's not theoretical, right? And I think a lot of times people forget that. They're like, oh, well, we're advocating for this specific change, but it's like, we're advocating it because I see the young people on the street. Right. You see the challenges that young people are having with mental health, all these other things, and families struggling, struggling to stay housed, struggling to feed their children. And so to think that people aren't, if you're carrying that, the people you work with are also carrying that with them. And so to give people some grace, some support, and to acknowledge that that is a part of the work.
That's really good. How do you balance that, though? Because oftentimes, and I like to think of myself as someone who has compassion to a fault almost, if there's a such thing. Yeah. But how do you really balance that when when you have somebody that brings certain things, or brings some of the trauma into the workplace, and you find yourself trying to really focus on this person, which is taking you away from why you are in your position in the first place. You know what I'm saying? To fulfill the mission of the work. How do you balance that?
Well, I think it requires a couple things. One, I think it requires a recognition that we can be supportive of our staff, we can provide resources, but we cannot do the work for them, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's one thing.
Okay.
And it's being able to put that into context, to say, like, I'm here to be supportive, I'm here as an organization, this is what we can do, but you have to also go do that work.
You have to do the work.
You have to do that work. I've had to do that work, and so do you, right? So so we can all show up and be our best selves. And I think, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's just not the right fit, or it's not the right time for that person to be in the role. And so I think as a leader is also recognizing that and being able to help that person see it for themselves and say, okay, well, what can I help you do next? How can I put you on the right journey for the right thing for you at this time in your life? And that's happened because for me, like, I end up having, which is really exciting, the opportunity to have new leaders coming in the field. And I think that's really important, that we need to grow and sustain our youth to become, the next Tige, to continue this work on. And yet at times, often they're like first generation college students, and they have other aspirations. They want to go to grad school, they want to do other things. So they might come to me for like a year or 2 years, and I'm like, oh man, I wish this person could stay in my organization and continue to grow. But at the same time, I have to be able to say, no, actually, you are the architect of your future. How can I help you continue to rise and shine? And I know at some point you're going to give that back, and you're going to bring it back to the work in some way. But I think we get caught up in holding on to people so that we can make the organization sustainable and like who's there, and not just letting people grow and fly. So.
Oh, I love your level of maturity, because honey, I have separation anxiety. I'm trying to hold, even when I know early on when it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
I have this, and I've had to really work on this sort of feeling like savior complex, where I know it's not working, but with the right tools, the right resources, the right nurturing, we can get them there. And we can, and then if we are successful in getting them there, it's like, well, where you go? No, you can't. I put in all this work. I invested in you. What you do? You can't go.
I know, you have to have faith that it's going to be paid forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm working on that. Okay.
It's not easy. There's lots of tears, but I think one of the things, I clerked for Judge Roger Gregory. He is a judge on the Fourth Circuit in the city of Richmond, federal judge, chief judge. He's amazing, amazing man who I learned a lot from. And one of the things he would tell us as clerks is that he just couldn't wait to see us soar. Like that's my gift. That if you can do anything for me, just continue to soar so I can watch it.
Wow.
And so I really hold
that.
And so the more I can help support people so that they can soar, and that's the gift back, to watch them be really successful.
I love that. Yeah. But when that happens, that means now you got to go back on a search find someone else to fill that position.
It does. I know. It's not easy. Trust me. Okay. It's really hard. It's not easy, but I do think hiring's hard. It's hard.
Hiring is hard. And you and I share, we're in a leadership class together, City Scholars. We love City Scholars, and our leader, Miss Kellyanne Hogan. But one of the things that we talk about in our leadership program is to hire slow and fire fast. I've been horrible with both, because I don't like the word firing at all. No. Like I have a tendency to think about people's livelihood and some other things. So that word just gives me pause. But the hiring slow part is also hard, because when there's a need in the organization, right now, we have a position that we're going to be hiring. But when I tell you the process is going to be snail pace, it has to be snail pace, because you're trying to find the right person. You're wanting to invest. And I had someone to actually recommend a young lady, and they said, she's aspiring to start her own nonprofit, doing what, similar work. And I said, and they said she'll be maybe a good candidate. And I said, I'd rather mentor her than hire her. Because if I hire her, then I'm going to have to be concerned about when she's leaving. And it's not going to be very productive for me. So I'd rather be a mentor for her than to actually be her employer, because it does take a lot of time. Well,
you have to think about it, though. I mean, because sometimes you could hire, and actually learning in the doing, right? Versus in the mentoring.
That's true.
And that's
Practical.
Practical experience. And sometimes, so hilariously, when I was in college, I worked at the Department of Justice as an intern. And almost always, all the lawyers there would be like, don't go to law school. Don't you see what we were going through? Don't go to law school. And about half of the intern class would be like, yep, that ain't for me. And then the other half would be like, no, actually, I still want to do it. So sometimes it's in the doing that people actually really find their purpose and what they want.
This is true.
Or don't want.
This is true.
Yeah.
I think, yes, this feels like therapy. I love it. I mean, I could see that. And I think sometimes, I know for me, I'm so integrated in the work itself and why we exist that it's really hard for me to shift that mindset of trying to really bring you in, learn what you learn, and then send you on. But I'm working.
It's a work
on
in
that.
progress.
It really is. Yeah. Wow. So what, like, some of your leaders who you admire? Like, who are some of those?
That's always a hard question because I feel like I take a lot from lots of different people that I encounter.
Yeah.
And, try things on and try things off. And,
Right.
But two people that I for sure really admire in their work and in their leadership are Mother Teresa and Ella Baker. Like those are my two like real North Stars when it comes to like the values that I hold, how I want to live my life, what I want to leave as part of the work that I've done while I'm here. Both of them. And I think Mother Teresa really is, just the spirituality, the calling, answering the call.
Because this work really is a calling. You got to be called to this.
Yeah, and feel like it's your purpose, right?
Absolutely.
And that's how I feel. That this is the work that I'm here to do. And at the same time, I think she talked about how answering the call is not an easy thing, right? It doesn't mean the work is in, oh yeah, I answered the call and it's going to be an easy road from there. And so I think that I really draw inspiration from the strength and the courage that she had to live with the poor, to really give up a lot to be able to do the work that she was doing for the greater good, and to really talk about the dehumanization of people all across the world and how it was really called upon the rest of us to do. It's like not to pity or provide charity to the poor, but actually for us to do the work that is to recognize that there are brothers and sisters, and it's for us to do more.
Humanity.
The humanity, yes. And so that for me is really core. And then Ella Baker, I mean, she's just amazing. Just an amazing person. And I think one of the things that I really draw from her, she talks about letting the young people lead, getting out the way. So at some point, me and you got to get out the way.
We got to go, girl.
We got to get out the way.
I'm almost ready to slide to the side.
Slide to the left.
Yes.
But also, she talks a lot about how you need to look for people who aren't looking to be leaders, but how to grow leadership in others. And she really talked about like how in movements, like she wasn't concerned with who wants to be the leader, but like who's trying to grow the leaders. And that I think is really so critically important because then you're putting your faith in the charismatic leadership of one person or a couple of people to really carry things forward when it's our collective goal that only gets us across the finish line.
Absolutely.
And so that to me is just really inspiring. I take a lot from her, and just being able to have that humility to work behind the scenes, not worried about just getting the work done.
Yes.
So
it's about the work.
Yeah.
It's about the work.
Yeah.
That is so good. Well, I know there are quite a few people who admire you because in our leadership class, they talk about it's like, who do we gain from? It's like, well, Shimica, I just be listening and I pull nuggets here. I'm like, I know that's right. I do too. I'll be writing down. What does Shimica say?
It's a communal space of learning and love.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. But it's so good. And oftentimes just to know that you're not alone.
Absolutely.
In some of the things. Because does leadership feel lonely for you sometimes?
Absolutely. I was just talking to a young leader earlier this week and just sharing that, it's a very lonely place to be at times. I mean, I think, speaking of mental health, I think part of it is, you have to like think about not only the work you're trying to do, the organization you're trying to manage and maintain, people's livelihoods on the line for the, making sure that it's sustainable. And that can feel really lonely, and you can get in your head, like, am I doing this right?
Right.
All the things. And I don't call it imposter syndrome anymore. I think it's not about that. It's about like, just having the faith that what I'm continuing to do piece by piece, that it's a marathon and not a sprint, and that we're going to get there.
Right.
But yeah, it can be very lonely.
And having the faith that you are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And that you are making the right decisions. And I like to say sometimes, if you know the heart behind the work, then when you do hit those challenging roads, you're not going to question the motive, because you know the heart behind the work and the mission of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes we will make mistakes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does feel like trial and error. I know this is part of the reason why, one of the reasons why this podcast exists, because when I started an organization 15 years ago, it was all trial and error for me. I was figuring things out as I go along. And it's hard to sometimes just call up a CEO and say, can I talk to you?
Yes.
Can you mentor me? Because they're like, what? They're juggling. They're juggling their staff, their home life, their business.
Yeah.
So it's not always easy to just kind of have somebody that you can call and really, flush some things through.
Yeah.
So
and gets
hopefully.
it. And who gets like what you're managing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So my hope is that this podcast would be that for people, where you can hear certain nuggets and glean from them and practice them.
Yeah.
So what are some of the values in your organization?
So, I think that's one thing that you always bring me when I see you, which is a core value, is joy. Like, we really work to bring joy. I think that is a part of sort of like the radical grace and leadership journey that we're on for the anti-poverty movement, to really have an abundance mindset, that there is enough, there's enough for all of us, there's more than enough.
Yes.
And that there really can be sparks of joy in like all that we're doing. We're talking about,
even though it's hard work.
Right, we're decentralizing power. That's one of the other pieces, really having collective ownership models around the work that we're doing. I think that those are the main sort of things that we're working towards.
That's good. That's really good. There's a scripture that says laughter is like medicine. It's good for the soul, because this work will have you crying all the time if your focus was just on the reality.
That's right.
But really focusing on the healing and the future, and being sort of the answer to a lot of the challenges that our young people are facing. Yes, joy is very important. And we have to have it on purpose.
Yes. Well, and it's a practice, It's a practice, and I think part of one of the things that, like, speaking of like narratives, like when we've always talked about poverty, it's never from a place of like joy, and it's like, oh, that's antithetical. People are, and then people are really hurting, and it's hard. But if you've grown up in a community, there are places where there's joy. There's joy in giving, there's joy in receiving, there's joy in help, there's joy in knowing what people are doing for each other every day. So we try to lean into that, and not as from a place of like, oh, it's sort of like commercialized joy. No, it's about the joy that comes from the fire within of knowing that we're doing like righteous work, and that the work is being led by the people who've been most impacted, and that the work is bringing the people who've been most impacted to policymakers so that they can tell their own stories. And like that's where the joy is coming from.
I know that. I'm a sip on that. Absolutely. I tell, some of the people that's in my circle, it's like, for me, there's no greater reward than to see the young people that have gone through the program now out doing the work, despite all the odds that were stacked against them. They saw the bigger picture. They saw the purpose. They're learning how to use that pain for purpose, how to turn that into, impact, and not allow it to be the reason for repeating the constant cycle of, the things that they've been through. So I could talk to you all day long. I mean, because one, you're so wise, and you've had so much experience. You're also a commissioner, right? Are you an LA commissioner?
I am
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, the Commission on Families for the Los Angeles County Commission on Families, I serve on that commission. And the commission is really there to support and think about how the county is addressing the child welfare system, all the other issues impacting children. And so I'm really excited to have been in service several years now and to currently chair the commission.
Thank you. How many commissioners do we have?
Now you're going to ask me. We just actually are at a full count. So I think we're at about 10.
Okay. Are you the president of the commission? Aren't you?
Or the chair. So
you're the
current chair of the
current
commission.
chair. Just leadership on everything you touch, huh? I love it. I love it. I love it. Look, is there anything else you want to share? Just any nuggets, I mean, you've dropped a million nuggets already. Let me just put that out there. But anything else you want to share just about reality that leadership that people may not think about, or some tools that you can give, our listeners about what this road is really like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more than a title. And let me tell you, I hate the term boss lady.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
it's just
I
that
know.
thing for me. I'm like, honey, that's so much bigger than a cute slogan.
Yes,
like
it is.
And no offense to those who hashtag boss lady, y'all do you. I'm just saying, for me, I'm like, honey.
I think just be a listener, like I think we talk about lifelong learning a lot, which is like, how are you staying abreast of what's going on in your industry, all these pieces, but it's really about listening. And like, how are you listening? To whom are you listening? For what are you listening? And I think if we could do that more as leaders, like we would hear our teams better, we would hear outside folks better, and we could adjust, right? Yeah. Because we're actually deeply listening and trying to be open to what is needed in the moment, because it's ever shifting and ever changing, particularly in the nonprofit space. I feel like 5 years ago is different from where it is right now. Right. And I'm sure it will be 5 years from now. And so as I think about, we have people in our cohort who've been leaders of organizations for 10, 15, 20 years. It's like, well, how do you sustain that? And I think it's because they're listening. They're listening to the team. They're listening to the people they're working with, and the community. Yeah. And that's what helps you be sustainable, because it's not about sort of you and what you want to achieve or what you want the organization to achieve. It really gets back to the collective mission-driven work that is, I'm sure, each and every organization that's out there started with.
Right. No, absolutely. And listening, I get it all the time from my husband. I need you to listen. I need you to listen. Listening isn't always easy, because sometimes we're in our own head.
That's right.
And sometimes we think we know what's going to be said before it's even said. So it is a muscle that we as leaders have to really, really, really practice. Yeah. And when you're, somebody like me who feel like, ADD, I just be ADHD, whatever it is. I'm just constantly, like, my adrenaline is always flowing. I'm a highly energetic person. And for me, sometimes to just sit and listen and really take it in and process, it's a practice.
Yeah, it's a practice. It's not easy. And I think, it requires us as leaders to really, put ourselves in the back seat, which is not what people tell you often as a leader. Oh, you have to do this. You have to be out in front. But it really requires you putting yourself in the back seat and listening. So
it absolutely does. Oh, I don't want to land this plane. I could. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And all the work. This is an amazing platform to talk about leadership. I think, as you said, when I started in my CEO role as a nonprofit leader, there was nothing like this. There's a lot of books to read.
Right. Oh gosh, yes.
And not that those books aren't really great, but it's very different than putting it into practice and seeing other people that look like you, who are in the work, talk openly and transparently about the things that are hard in this in the work. Yeah.
Well, I thank you again for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you also for joining in with me and my guest, Shimica Gaskins. I will put more information about her in the chat. I hope you learned something today or take away something today that will help you on your leadership journey to excel, and know that you are not alone. So please remember to tune in next week. And hey, don't forget those 3 magic words: subscribe, like, and share. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for today. I hope you were inspired and you gained some valuable nuggets that will help you to become a better leader and to walk in your God-given authority. Bye, until next time.